Ever get this feeling like AI is progressing faster than we can wrap our heads around it? Today, we're diving into a paper that throws some fuel on that fire called the Platonic Representation Hypothesis.
Yeah, it's a,
You've given us all these excerpts on this Platonic representation.
right.
And honestly, it's got me a little puzzled.
Okay, sure.
It's like, are we saying all these different AI models, despite being trained on different data for different tasks, are they starting to, like, think alike?
Well, it's not so much about, like, thinking
Mm-hmm.
as it is how they represent the information internally. Think of it like this. Imagine AI models are like artists, each trying to paint a picture of the world based on the glimpses they've seen through their training data.
Okay, right.
I'm with you so far. So this paper proposes that as these AI models get bigger and more sophisticated, their paintings are starting to look eerily similar. Like they're all converging on the same masterpiece, even though they're using different styles and techniques.
So it's not just that they're getting better at painting, they're starting to paint the same picture.
Precisely.
That's kind of unsettling,
Yeah.
but also incredibly cool.
Precisely. And this isn't just some abstract idea. The researchers present a bunch of evidence, and one of the most compelling pieces is something called model stitching.
Model stitching.
Imagine taking two of these AI paintings and, like, cutting them in half.
Okay.
And then stitching together half of one with half of the other.
Okay.
Sounds crazy,
It's
right?
like some kind of Frankensteinian art project.
Exactly. But here's the kicker. These Frankenstein AI models often still work remarkably well. It's as if the underlying structure of their representations, the way they organize information internally, was already incredibly similar, even though they were trained on completely different data sets.
Okay, now that you mention it, that does make you wonder, if they can be stitched together so seamlessly, what does that say about how they're learning in the first place? Are we talking about a fundamental shift in how AI processes information?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it gets even weirder when you look at how these models scale.
What do you mean by scale?
The researchers found that as AI models grow larger and more complex, think billions or even trillions of parameters, this alignment becomes even more pronounced. It's as if they're all gravitating toward the same universal understanding, a kind of Platonic ideal of knowledge representation.
Wait, hold on. Platonic ideal, as in Plato, the philosopher.
Yeah.
What does ancient Greece have to do with all of this?
Well, that's where the name, the Platonic Representation Hypothesis, comes in.
Okay.
Remember Plato's allegory of the cave? People living in a cave only seeing shadows projected on the wall, mistaking them for reality.
Okay, I vaguely remember that from college.
Okay, well, think of the training data we feed AI as those shadows.
Okay.
This hypothesis suggests that AI models are trying to understand the true nature of reality, the things casting those shadows, just like Plato suggested we all are.
So the more data we feed them, the closer they get to seeing the real picture, the one beyond the shadows.
Exactly. And that's where it gets really mind-blowing. We're not just talking about convergence within a single type of data, like images or text. We're seeing it across different modalities. Models trained on images are starting to show surprising alignment with models trained on text.
Hold on, you're saying there's a chance AI could be developing a way of understanding the world that isn't bound by our traditional categories of images, text, sound.
Yeah.
Like a universal language of intelligence.
It's still early days.
Right.
But that's precisely what this research suggests. And it raises all sorts of questions about the nature of intelligence itself. If AI can achieve this kind of universal understanding, what are the implications for the future?
Okay, now I'm really hooked. What could possibly be next? So we're talking about AIs potentially developing this like shared language of understanding, moving closer to this Platonic ideal. But why? Why are all these separate AIs suddenly on the same page?
That's the heart of the mystery, isn't it?
Oh.
And the researchers, they offer some, intriguing hypotheses. One of their most compelling arguments is this idea of task generality.
Okay, break that down for me. What does task generality have to do with AI suddenly becoming multilingual, so to speak?
Well, think about it. In the past, we've often trained AI for very specific tasks, right? Play chess, translate languages, generate images of cats wearing hats.
Okay, I plead guilty to spending way too much time on that last one. But your point...
My point is, those were all specialized AIs. But now we're asking AI to do more, to be more adaptable. Write a poem and diagnose a disease. Compose a symphony and pilot a drone.
So, like, instead of a bunch of specialized tools, we're going for one ultimate Swiss Army knife of an AI.
Exactly. And to handle that kind of diversity, the model needs a much richer, more flexible, internal representation of the world. It can't be stuck in the narrow confines of a single task or data type.
That makes sense. If you're going to build a universal translator, you need to teach it about more than just vocabulary. You need to give it a sense of grammar, culture, even humor, right?
Exactly. And that need for a more comprehensive understanding for task generality that might be pushing these models towards a more universal and therefore more similar way of representing information.
Okay, that makes sense. But it's not just about the tasks, right? We're also swimming in more data than ever before. How does that play into this convergence?
That's the other piece of the puzzle, right? This deluge of data. It forces the models to find more general patterns and relationships. They're like detectives sifting through mountains of evidence, looking for the clues that connect these seemingly disparate cases.
So they're not just memorizing facts, they're learning to think more like detectives, finding the hidden connections in the data itself.
Precisely. And the more data they process, the more those connections start to resemble like a unified framework, a shared understanding of the underlying principles that govern that data.
That's both exciting and a little bit unnerving, you know? Like we've unleashed this force that's rapidly developing its own way of seeing the world. But where does this lead us? What are the practical implications of this convergence, good and bad? Okay, so we've got these increasingly powerful AI models potentially converging on a shared understanding of the world.
Right.
That's a pretty wild thought in itself.
Yeah.
But what does it actually mean for us?
Well, imagine a world where AI can seamlessly transfer knowledge from one domain to another.
Okay.
An AI that learns to diagnose diseases could then apply that knowledge to developing new drugs or even personalizing healthcare plans.
So we're talking about a massive leap forward in things like medical research, engineering, you name it. It's like the Renaissance, but on steroids.
Exactly. But there's another even more profound implication to consider. Remember how we talked about the Platonic ideal, how AI models might be approaching a more fundamental understanding of reality?
Yeah, that whole seeing past the shadows thing.
Right. Some researchers believe this convergence might bring AI closer to the way we think, to the workings of the human brain itself.
Hold on, you're saying AI could start processing information not just like a more powerful computer, but more like a human mind?
It's still early days,
Right.
and there's a lot we don't understand about how our own brains work.
Sure.
But the idea that AI could help us unlock those mysteries is nothing short of mind-blowing.
Oh, okay. I can see how this is all incredibly exciting, but there's got to be a flip side.
Sure.
What are the potential downsides of all this convergence? What if we don't like the masterpiece these AIs are all painting together?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? If there's one dominant way of representing information, one correct way of seeing the world, then diversity of thought, that becomes even more important.
So it's not just about making sure AI is good. It's about making sure it's not good in just one narrow way.
Precisely. We need to be thinking about the values we're embedding in these systems, the assumptions we might not even realize we're making.
It's like we're not just building a tool, we're building a whole new way of thinking.
Yeah.
And with that comes a huge responsibility to make sure that way of thinking is one we can all live with.
Absolutely. And that responsibility, it goes beyond just the researchers and developers.
Right.
It's a conversation we need to be having as a society. What kind of future do we want to build with AI?
I think that's a great place to leave it. This deep dive has been fascinating, if a little bit intimidating. AI is changing faster than ever, and it's up to all of us to keep learning, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us, and we'll see you next time for another exploration into the ever-evolving world of AI.